What's up, everybody? It's Greg. So by now, everybody's heard about the $2.2 trillion stimulus package, which has a whole lot of stuff in it. It is insane. Without a doubt, you've probably heard of the stimulus checks that are going to be going out. I have made 2 videos on those. Those links are in the description, so you can check those out. There are emergency loans to businesses. There's grants. There's this thing called the Payroll Protection Program, where you can essentially have some of your loan forgiven by the government. And there's also this thing called Mortgage Forbearance, and there is also a moratorium on evictions for those who are renting. Mortgage forbearance really just means that a lender cannot foreclose on your house if you do not make payments. And a moratorium on evictions means that a landlord cannot evict you if you do not make payments. So obviously, if you cannot be evicted for not making payments and you cannot have your house foreclosed on for not making payments, everybody's thinking, awesome, I'm not going to make payments. This is going to be great. I'm going to be able to save a lot of money. I can't say I blame them for being excited on the fact that you may not have to pay rent or you might not have to pay your mortgage. I mean, obviously, that is a huge chunk of expense. So yeah, I would love it if all of a sudden I didn't have a mortgage payment. I mean, you could even think of it this way. Most people say do not have a mortgage payment that is more than 28% of your gross income. So if you didn't have to pay your mortgage payment, that's like receiving a 28% raise. You know, for most people, that is thousands of dollars, which is a huge, huge chunk of money for them. That's thousands of dollars in savings without the risk of being foreclosed on or evicted. Or is it? In this video, I'm going to talk about it in the aspect of having no mortgage payment, but the rules are very similar for a renter. All right, to qualify for mortgage forbearance or to qualify for the fact that you don't have to make a mortgage payment without being foreclosed on, your loan has to be either federally owned or federally backed. There are many federal programs out there that will own mortgages. There are a lot of mortgages that are federally backed. Things that we are used to hearing are Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac. Obviously, those are big organizations that back a lot of loans. And because of a lot of Americans have loans that are backed by this, then a lot of Americans are actually eligible for this mortgage forbearance. You know, like me, for example, my mortgage is serviced by Chase, but it is backed by Freddie Mac. And I know this because I just recently got a letter in the mail saying that my loan is backed by Freddie Mac, even though it is going to continue to be serviced by Chase. If you don't know if your mortgage is federally owned or federally backed, you can ask your service provider. So whoever is servicing your loan, whoever you make payments to, you can go and ask them and they should be able to tell you. All right, now let's get into the meat of it. Should you ask for forbearance and how do you do it? Really, in the stimulus package, all it says is to go and ask your loan servicer for forbearance. On page 568 of the 880-page stimulus bill, you can find directions on how to ask for forbearance. All it really says is ask your servicer, and you have to certify that you are having a tough time financially because of COVID-19. All right, forbearance, like I said before, is almost just like asking, hey, I don't want to make my mortgage payments, can you pause so I do not have to make payments? And with it, you do not have the risk of being foreclosed on. According to the stimulus bill, you can request forbearance for 180 days, which is essentially 6 months. But if things are still hard after that initial 180 days, you can ask for an extension for another 180 days. So if you do it clear to term, you could do a whole 12 months of forbearance. On the renter side, it's a little bit different. You can do it for 120 days, which is 4 months, and so you do not risk being evicted for 120 days. All right, so the rules for a renter are very similar to the rules for a homeowner. So the homeowner, that loan has to be federally owned or federally backed. For a renter, the person who owns it, so your landlord, if his mortgage is federally owned or federally backed, then he cannot evict you for up to 120 days if you do not make your rent payments. With the forbearance on your mortgage, obviously, like I said before, you can go a full 12 months without paying and they cannot foreclose on your house. And it also says in the stimulus package that they cannot charge you extra fees or extra interest. At this point, you might be thinking, man, this actually sounds pretty good. I'm going to take a pause and not pay my mortgage payment. But it has huge downsides, so I'm going to talk about those now. So a forbearance, like I said before, is essentially just being like, time out, let's pause my mortgage payment. But eventually, you have to start paying again, and that's where it gets tricky. So in the stimulus package, it doesn't really have any specific rules on when you start paying payments again, how you're supposed to make up those 12 months worth of payments that you've missed. So from what I've found, your servicer, your loan servicer is the one who determines how that 12 months that you've missed is going to be paid back. And they could do this in a variety of ways. They could say, hey, after 12 months, if you haven't paid your mortgage for 12 months, yeah, I can't foreclose on your house, but as soon as that 12 months is over, I'm going to require a balloon payment, aka I'm going to make you pay all 12 months that you've missed at once. Obviously, that is a huge expense. So you wait 12 months and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, you owe 12 months worth of mortgage payments, and if you do not make it, then they can foreclose on you. So you may be able to extend and say, hey, I don't want to make my payments, but after 12 months, you may end up being in that foreclosure boat anyways. Some other things that have been thrown out there for servicers, they could make you make double payments. So say you missed 12 months worth of payments. After that, they might just say, okay, well, you're going to make a payment twice as big as you normally would, and you do that for the next 12 months until you're completely caught up on the 12 months that you've missed. They may also just go onto a payment plan with you where you could say, hey, I want to pay 20% extra until I'm paid off. And if you're really lucky, which I don't know if this is going to happen or not, because obviously it is up to the servicer of the loan, they may just say, hey, we're just going to extend your mortgage by a year. We'll tack on what you've missed to the back end of your mortgage, and you just start resuming payments. I just don't see that happening, because if you're not making payments for 12 months and a whole lot of other people aren't making payments for 12 months, that servicer is going to need cash. So I would assume that they're going to want you to pay at least a big chunk right when you start back up with your mortgage. I would assume it's going to be very similar on the renter side. So obviously your landlord, if his property is federally owned or federally backed, cannot evict you for up to 4 months or 120 days for you not making payments. But once those 120 days are up, your landlord may be able to say, hey, you owe me 4 months worth of rent, pay it now or I'm going to evict you. Right now, there is no official guidance within the CARES Act, so we're probably going to have to wait to see if there's any further official guidance that they give out as far as what servicers of loans can do and what landlords can do. But as of right now, it sounds like it is up to the servicer and up to the landlord to decide how you are going to pay back all of those payments that you missed. So with this, I think it's extremely risky to just say, hey, I'm going to pause on my mortgage. I'm going to pause on paying rent, because eventually all of that stuff is going to come due, and it may come due all at once. You may have a huge payment, which for most people, sadly, they're just not great with finance. So if you pause and you take that money and you go spend it somewhere else, and then 12 months later or 4 months later, if you're a renter, all of that comes due, man, you're going to be screwed. You're going to have to pay a whole bunch, and that money's probably spent. So there are very few instances where I would say somebody should do this. Like, I'm talking, you've already consigned yourself to living off of nothing, spending no money, living off rice and beans. That means no Netflix, no Disney Plus, no coffee, no soda, nothing. You have cut literally everything, every expense that you could possibly cut, and you are living bare bones. And then if you're at risk of losing your house to foreclosure, then yes, it might be smart to ask for forbearance, but this is a last resort. What I think the federal government is trying to accomplish with all of this is to give people peace of mind to say, hey, if you go unemployed because of this virus for an extended period of time and it gets really hard to make your mortgage payment or to pay rent, we're going to make sure that you have a roof over your head and that you can be somewhere safe. If you do ask for forbearance, or if you do end up having a time where you are not paying your rent, if you end up becoming employed again, you can go back and stop the forbearance. So if you say you're in it for 6 months, you say, I want those first 6 months, but then 2 months into it, you get a job. It's good to stop that forbearance and then start making payments again. Because like I said before, they might end up asking for a huge balloon payment by the end of it. And then if you don't have that money, it's going to be really tough and you could get foreclosed on or you could get evicted. So in tough times like these, it is best to be extremely frugal, live within your means, do not spend money that you do not have to, so that you can make your mortgage payment even if you are unemployed or you're temporarily out of a job. Honestly, in my opinion, this is a really bad aspect of a stimulus package because if you do not do the research, if you do not look into it, it sounds as if you could go a full year without paying a mortgage payment with no consequences. But that's not the case. You could still end up being in that delinquent boat. You just might have it 12 months from now, and then they're going to require you to pay all your mortgage, and you could still get foreclosed on. So if people don't do the research, this is really a bad thing. So as I said before, don't use this mortgage forbearance unless it is a very, very last resort. Then it's a possibility just to keep a roof over your head. All right, if you have any other questions on anything within the stimulus package, I have read it a lot. I will continue reading it. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'd love to do a video on anything that you have concerns on. Remember to hit that like button if you found this information useful. That just allows the internet to know that other people find it useful, and it would really help on my channel. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys next time.